Most buyers think looking at more homes will help them make a better decision. But a lot of times, it actually does the opposite. It makes the decision harder. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Closing the Deal. I'm one of your hosts, Zach Dixon, and sitting across from me today is my co-host, Sam Enright. And today we're talking about something that almost every buyer always runs into at some point, and that's getting stuck comparing homes between ones that they've seen. On the surface, it feels like you're being smart, but ultimately, sometimes comparing those homes between ones that you've seen previously, ones that you've seen making offers on previously, it can get you into a little bit of trouble, can be a little bit of a trap that we see sometimes with buyers in the market. So yeah, super excited, guys, for today's episode. Sam, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good, brother. I appreciate you asking and excited to dive into this a little bit. I know this is a little bit more of your area of expertise, so to speak. So excited to, help bring some value to folks and kind of, you know, illuminate a little bit of why, maybe looking at too many homes can be a little bit of a debilitating factor when it comes to purchasing and deciding what home is ultimately the best fit for you.
Yeah, on the surface, I mean, again, it just seems like, scheduling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 showings in a day is going to be a good thing. You're going to give yourself options and different scenarios. But I think that sometimes, in the home buying journey, as well as just in general, too much information can be a problem. Sometimes in our society with social media and stuff like that, just having too much information, too many scenarios running through your head can ultimately, like we've talked about in previous episodes, just bog you down and help make a wrong decision. Should say help kind of push you towards making a wrong decision and make you feel like you can't make a mistake, and obviously something that we've talked about in previous episodes. But yeah, it's something that we see often, something that, especially with first time home buyers getting started, they want to see as many properties as they can, and again, not always a bad thing, but there are scenarios where that does turn to be a just a tough situation all in all, not helping you make a good decision.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you touched on it there just in general in life, right? Like I'm guilty of it myself. Just, you know, I when you were talking, like the example of like TVs came to mind. How many different TV brands are there out there nowadays? And they are all like off subject, but they're all like relatively fairly priced these days comparative to what they were. Like I remember when my parents were buying TVs and they're like, yeah,
Thousands
this
of
TV's like
dollars.
thousands of dollars. And it's like, now you can go get a pretty nice TV for like $300. But you always see like the little snapshots, right? Okay, this TV does this. It has the ULED of this and whatever. And then I just think like, you're just sitting here, you're like, okay, I have 5 TVs, all the same price point, all that basically do the same exact thing. Like, okay, well, which one is the best one? Then you start reading reviews, and then you're in there, and it's like all of that information can just feel like an overload at some point. It's like to the point where you're just kind of at some point just like, to hell with it. I'll just make a decision and live with it. You know what I mean? So I know that, sometimes there is such thing as too much information without action, right? And so I feel like there is a position you can get into with the home search process in which you feel like if you've seen 25, 30 houses, now they're all starting to blend together, and you're like, well, I like this thing about this and I liked here, and then I didn't like this, and then it just becomes this thing where it's like, oh my goodness, how do you sit back and actually process all of this information that you have taken in? So yeah, I think it's going to be a good episode to kind of right the ship a little bit, kind of maybe debunk that, help people to see that sometimes less can be more.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that kind of just takes us into our first segment here is, why comparing feels like the right move as a whole. Buyers again they want to see more options. They want to see everything that's out there. They want to, make sure that they've left no stone unturned, no box unchecked. You don't want to miss anything. When you get on the MLS and you get those home search alerts to your email every morning, you're going to probably see, depending on your parameters, probably somewhere between 10 and 20 properties come on the market every single morning, that you're going to be able to take a look at. And, obviously just wanting to not feel like you're missing anything, or a little bit of FOMO, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago as well. And then ultimately just wanting to make the best decision as a whole. Buyers feel like, making the best decision means leaving no stone unturned, no box unchecked. And while that is absolutely the case, I just think that there needs to be a line drawn between what we see on our MLS alerts and what we actually go physically see in person. Because again, those are two completely different things. You're able to compare the things that you see on the MLS, and not have necessarily all of the information that you would have if you went to actually go see it in person and walk through it and see the different things with your own two eyes. Seeing the pictures, seeing the listing, and all the information that comes with that is completely different from actually going to see it in person, and having a showing. And obviously that just takes time as well. And you want to be kind of, valuable with your own time. You don't want to just be walking through properties for walking through property's sake. That's just ultimately not going to be a very good idea for you as a buyer, because again, it's just going to lead to a little bit of information overload as a whole. So I guess the key idea in general is that you feel like comparing is being responsible by, seeing all of these properties, walking through the properties, and making sure you leave no stone unturned. But again, I just think that sometimes it leads to a little bit of information overload, and just comparing to, previous ones that you really loved, and you maybe didn't get the offer accepted on that one. And now you're, looking backwards instead of kind of looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, great points there overall, brother. And, I know that, much like the previous example, comparing can feel like something that you definitely should do. And not to say that you shouldn't, but it should be in a structured capacity, right? In a way that, we understand what we're doing. Because even while you were talking, I did think of the example of like somebody who, let's say you set them up on an MLS drip and they had these, these things, right? These parameters that they wanted for a house. And then in their free time, they're also getting on Realtor and Zillow, and then they're looking at homes that, don't necessarily meet their parameters. You're like, ooh, I kind of like this one, but this doesn't check these boxes. And then it's like, then you start to throw that into the mix. And it's like, then you talk to your realtor, you're like, hey, I want to go check out this house. And the realtor's like, this house like literally has like 4 unchecked boxes from what you were looking for. But yeah, you know what I mean? It's like one of those things where it's like, well, what are we doing? Are we just adding information and adding, viewings for the sake of just adding them? Or, what is the ultimate end goal here? And I do know that there's a level of thinking that you may need something or want something, and then, not knowing if there's something else out there, So obviously just something to consider, but I do feel like there has to be a structured way when it comes to, comparing the homes that you're looking at.
Absolutely. It's a little bit of tunnel vision. Just knowing, again, I know that we've talked about in previous episodes, the wants versus needs list, and making sure we have, a clear idea of what we're looking for. And so, yeah, obviously when you start to throw more details in the mix, you just have a lot more information. It's very, very diluted. And again, small differences can feel a little bit bigger than what they are when you're looking backwards instead of forwards. Maybe you wanted an acre, and you went and saw a property that only has a quarter acre, and now you're looking back on now I do want an acre, but this house on the quarter acre was a perfect house and it checked every other box. So again, it's just comparing to the last one is a good thing when done in, like you mentioned, in a structured way. But again, when we start to get down to the minute details and things like that, just an information overload can just be a very detrimental part of the process, and ultimately get to a place or a spot where, you're walking through homes and, you've seen 10, 12, 14 over the last couple of weeks, and none of them feel good enough. At that point, that's probably where we need to take a little bit of a step back and evaluate where we are with the home search and what we want and what we need in the home search, and kind of go from there and be more forward looking than backward looking as a whole.
Yeah, great point there about just kind of taking a step back. Um, I think that's perfect, because when I feel overloaded and when I feel, overstimulated with information, I mean, that's a big thing, is just take a step back, take a breath, let's reevaluate, reassess where we're at, and figure out where the next route to go from there is, because continuing down that path is only just going to continue to overload you even further, to the point where you may even just say, I'm just going to give up on this whole home search thing and just move on, and so obviously it's not what you really want. It's not what we want for you. We want to make sure that obviously we're getting you in the home that you want to be in. So it's more so just, hey, let's take some time to reevaluate. Hey, what have we seen? Let's reestablish what it is that we are looking for, and maybe moving forward, stick to a little bit better structure of, hey, we're only going to view houses that check at least these boxes, right?
Absolutely, and that just kind of takes you to the hidden problem that happens when you start to do all of those things. You're looking for perfection, and I think we've mentioned this ad nauseum again, but you're never going to find just a perfect house. It's not going to happen. Perfection in life is very, very, very few and far between. You may run into that once in a blue moon. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to make some concessions, some trade-offs. But again, that's why you put that wants versus needs list together. You're probably not going to make the concessions or the trade-offs on the needs themselves, but you may have to do it on the wants a little bit. There's not going to be a property likely that fits all the needs and all of the wants, and you get exactly what you want out of it. It's just more than likely is not going to happen. And ultimately, when you get down that path as well, you kind of lose sight on what the actual needs are. When you start to concede on the needs part, like that's where we need to take a step back and just kind of overall evaluate what we're looking for and what we're trying to do and accomplish in the home search as a whole. And just, yeah, ultimately, the decision when you have that information overload and, have too many homes on the docket, too many homes floating around in the brain, it just makes the decision as a whole very, very much harder. It's not going to make it easier by seeing, 20 properties in a weekend. Again, that is just going to be a very, very tough decision to make and try to weed through all of the different aspects of those properties. It's just not set up for success, in my opinion. The best ones are we find a handful of properties that we want to see this weekend that fit all of our needs and fit some of our wants, and maybe fit different wants. Some if we want to see 3 properties this weekend, all 3 fit different wants on our wants list, and that is going to that's going to be a better comparison for us as the buyer on a Sunday evening. And as you walk through it, you'll realize what wants we actually want to kind of turn into needs at that point as well. And just, I think that's the better comparison rather than just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks with, 20, 25 properties in a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, brother. So yeah, that feels like a good way to segue into, basically what do buyers who win, or buyers who get their offer accepted, like what do they do differently when it comes to the home search than maybe buyers who, are stuck in this, comparison wheel where it just feels like house after house after house, and, being over flooded with information?
Well, again, I think I've touched on it already. Is that they know exactly what matters to them. They know what needs they want. They have a very, very clear vision of what this property is going to look like. They have tunnel vision. They see the light at the end of the tunnel. They are going to be able to, again, shift out some of the noise that they see on the MLS, because again, there is going to be properties that you get even in your parameter box, even in your drip campaign, that are not going to fit everything that you want. But again, the the goal is to be able to, again, know what matters to you and what you want to have a very, very clear vision of that at the end of the day. And again, being willing to accept trade-offs too. We don't want to, again, concede or trade off on any of our needs that we want in this property or anything that you have a very, very clear vision on. But there is some things that we can trade off in terms of, maybe the wants list, or also on, the contract specific. When you do go to make that offer, there are things that we can make a little bit more seller friendly, that will make it more acceptable for the seller and more likely for your offer to be accepted as a whole, if you do decide that this property is the one that we want to move forward with. Being able to accept those trade-offs is what good buyers are going to be able to do in any capacity. And again, this kind of, again, I just mentioned this as well, but just not expecting every single box to be checked off. Again, there are so many properties out there, and none of them, more than likely, none of them are going to be perfect for you. There's going to be some trade-offs. There's going to be things that aren't exactly how you want them when you walk through. But again, that's kind of the nature and kind of the fun of being a homeowner too. You can make the property perfect once it's your property. You can make it perfect to you and exactly how you want it. But the fact of the matter is that's more than likely not going to happen with a previous owner. They made it perfect for them, more than likely. You know what I mean? So you as the buyer are going to come in and make it perfect for you. That's more than likely just not going to be the case as you walk through it and as you at the day of purchase as well.
Yeah, I would like to add like just a little side story in there. Just talking about this idea of perfection, because we actually just closed a construction loan, and it was a custom build construction loan for a client. And even in their build, they had to make some concessions on things that they just, because of the budget, the value, whatever the case may be, there just was not enough funds in there to make everything exactly the way that they wanted it. And so even inside of a custom build, they even had to make some concessions and say, okay, hey, here's what is maybe on the higher on the wants list, not necessarily on the needs list. And let's, maybe kind of trim this off here. And, potentially something that can be done down the road, potentially something that can be added later, in, in one of those things. So even inside of that scenario, when you're custom building your own home, the idea of perfection is, it's I guess it's okay to strive for, but if we understand that the reality is that that's not going to happen, right? So, there is just no such thing as perfection out there in any way, shape, or form in any walk of life. So there's always going to be things that we have to concede on, and you just have to be really steadfast in what those things are you're willing to concede on and things that you're not willing to concede on.
For sure. And that's a great example, because again, if they were sitting around waiting for all of the things to be checked off, for it to be perfect, they probably wouldn't have pulled the trigger on a custom home, or just as a normal buyer, you wouldn't pull the trigger if you were sitting around waiting for perfection. And again, it's just not what we want, because ultimately, if you talk to a lot of people, they're going to be just down the road after their home purchase, even if the home wasn't perfect at that point, they're going to be happy with their decision. A good amount of people are going to feel validated in actually pulling the trigger and buying that home, and especially in the first time home buyer market as well. And so I think that it's just, when you go in with the mindset of this has to be perfect and we're not going to pull the trigger until it is perfect, you're going to be sitting on the sidelines for a lot longer than you would like to, in that aspect. So,
yeah, yep, 100%, brother. It's a great point, and ultimately, we like to say it around here when it comes to stuff we got going on, but imperfect action beats no action. So, the reality is that, even if you take the action for the home and it's not perfect, like Zach said, there's things that you can do to adjust it, to change it, to make it the way that you want it to be. And I think for most people, if you're honest with yourself in the home search, if you're honest with yourself as you're going through the process, I don't know a lot of people that we've helped close home loans that are, close on their homes that have come back 2-3 years later and regretted that decision, right? And said, hey, this was, just absolutely poor. The reality is most of those people, kind of got, hey, this is where we're at. This is where I'm trying to go. This is what I'm looking to do. Here's what I'm willing to concede on. Here's not what I'm willing to concede on. And then from there, I can start to do my own thing and start to make those adjustments as I see fit on the home and kind of make it my own. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, it's just the right home is not going to be perfect. It's what fits your life at this very moment, right now. And again, when you're able to pull the trigger on that, that is just that decision is going to be a much better journey, much better, outcome for you as the buyer than just sitting around and just comparing endlessly. It's just, that's not a path that I suggest for really any buyer that is looking to get into homeownership.
Yeah. 100%, brother. Yeah, guys. So the overarching theme, obviously, of this podcast is that the goal is not to find the perfect home. It's to find the right one that fits your life right now and to move forward with it confidently. So hope you guys had some good takeaways from this episode. Obviously kind of just a little bit of a mental reframe as you are out there doing your home search and are just maybe prepping for a home search and kind of getting in the right mindset to understand what it is that you're going to want, what it is that you need, and kind of getting an idea of what it is that you're willing to compromise on early. So, but that's all we got for you guys today. As you guys know, we drop new episodes every single Friday at noon Eastern. They're going to drop video and audio on YouTube, and then we are on audio only on Spotify and Apple as well. And then also we're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube Shorts. So feel free to give us a follow, check us out. Really appreciate you guys, all the engagement that we've been getting recently, and lots of good stuff in the works. And I'm excited to keep bringing you guys content.
Absolutely, guys. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's episode, and we will be seeing you guys in the next one. Cheers.